Welcome to the latest of my deep dive videos. Today I'm going to explore the 4 Cazimis which occur through January 2026. A Cazimi is when the Sun applies to another planet and they are exactly unified. But the radiance, the brilliance of the Sun at the heart of our very existences magnifies the energies of the other planetary player. It begins on January the 6th with Venus, then on the 9th with Mars, on the 21st when the Sun has moved into Aquarius with Mercury, and then on the 23rd of January it's the Sun combining with Pluto, perhaps the most influential of all these 4 Cazimis. But I think there's a wider symbolism because the sign of Capricorn, where the first 2 occur, is the sign of physical culmination. Very much to do with practicalities, can be to do with structures, of course it can be to do with the orthodox, it can also be to do with things like big government, big business, whereas the sign of Aquarius has a duality. It's much more through its Saturnian rulership about that continuity, but also for its Uranian rulership about being very progressive. So we're at a key moment in the overall life of the planet and all of us on it, and that's why this month I think has such an interesting dimension. I'm going to unpack all of this for you. I'm then going to go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces to give you a flavour of what I feel this represents for you in particular. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundel, a very warm welcome. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, we have found that over 50% of people who regularly watch my work are not subscribers. If that's you, please help the channel to continue to thrive and do so now. But your views, interactions, likes and comments are truly appreciated. Now we're into year 2026, but what does it hold for each of us from an individual perspective? It is only through our unique birth data that we can discover that. If you've yet to order your personal forecast for the next year, I'll prepare it a full 12 months from the time of your order. You'll also get your life roadmap report, crucial for understanding who we are and our journey so far on this earth. But also you'll get my free gift of your general, love, Chinese and Indian written zodiac forecast booklets. But if you apply Astro 26 at the checkout below, you'll get a total of 50% off. It's a unique offer, it's great value, and it really will help you to time your moves in the months ahead in the most appropriate of ways. So the first of these Cazimis occurs on the 6th of January, the day I'm recording this, because I am a little bit behind. Venus in Capricorn is quite steadfast. It's very much to do with an appreciation of affection, but also the use of resources, because Venus is about money, in a thoughtful, careful, cautious way because of the Saturnian rulership of Capricorn. But if there is a relationship in your life, and it doesn't have to be romantic, where you do feel really comfortable, there's something that's being established that has some real benefits for the long term, and you're really wanting to flow forwards with that, this particular Cazimi is a great chance to move in together, buy or rent that property, perhaps arrange the date to get married. It could be where you take a recent person you've met to meet your folks, and obviously the folks very much to do with Capricorn, the orthodox. Could be a bit nerve-wracking, but it could go really well. But what we can also understand with Venus is it can be about creativity, it can be about flair, it can also be about fashion, style. So we may see, just in terms of the rotation of styles that we do experience, some old favourites come back, some new, more Capricornian colours for sure. But the combination of the Sun and Mars, which comes after Mars and Venus are in exact conjunction themselves on the 8th of January, on the 9th, that has a different dimension because Mars can have a rather muscular presence, It's the ruler, of course, of Aries and Scorpio. In Aries, it's about taking action and being assertive. In Scorpio, it can be much deeper, much more psychological, and much more to do with transformation. But in the sign of Capricorn, Mars is exalted. He loves to be here, and his energy, together with Saturn's caution, is a great combination. It's just that what we are seeing is the use of very assertive force in order to have an impact on other people. Now, whether it's the Venezuelan situation, whether it's the discussion around Greenland, whether it is to do with how things are shifting around business, we are seeing some very powerful posturing, and that could be where the sun is blending with Mars in a way where someone really wants to have control in a very traditional way, and that control is very much top down. It's not particularly democratic. That's coming later in the month with Aquarius. But of course, the sun combining with Mars can have benefits. It's just on the other side of the heavens, we do have Jupiter. And Jupiter is a planet which is very much to do with philosophies. It's to do with growth, optimism and good fortune, but it is in a retrograde through to the 11th of March, and I feel Mars opposite Jupiter in particular means that that use of extra assertion can actually be over-egged and is not a good thing. But we can also see the other end of the spectrum on that Mars Cazimi, where in Iran we're seeing people uprising against the oppression, the over-assertion of top-down power. So it doesn't have to work in one direction. And of course, the story with Venezuela and Greenland is not over. You can make particular moves, and we all know from what happened in Iraq, the actual outcome, Libya and Syria too, can be very different to what was first envisioned. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays out. Now, as the month goes on the 17th of January, Venus moves into Aquarius. Very much a more detached energy, very progressive, a bit more liberal, able to get on with lots of different people, very much about getting our friendships and our network really working again after perhaps being a bit more serious with all this Capricornian energy early in the month, which is very much about achievement, goals and ambitions. But then on the 20th of January, both the Sun and Mercury move from Capricorn into Aquarius. And they're going to come together in the third Cazimi on the 21st of January. Now that's particularly intriguing because Mercury rules the second decan of Aquarius, and some astrologers feel that Mercury is accidentally exalted in Aquarius, and I totally agree. So Mercury works well in Aquarius, but that combination, there's usually about 6 Cazimis with Mercury in the year, and of course some of them can be when Mercury's retrograde, so an inferior conjunction. This one is a superior conjunction. Is brilliant for thinking about the long term, about getting in touch with people we've not heard from recently, about getting in touch with our higher purpose that goes beyond the material sphere, which is very Capricornian. But then Mars moves into Aquarius on the 23rd, but that's probably the most important Cazimi of the month, because on that day the Sun applies to Pluto. Now it's the third Cazimi between them, because if you recall, Pluto initially went into Aquarius in March 23 for 11 weeks, then back into Aquarius on the 21st of January last year, on its birthday in fact, and there was a Cazimi then, so it's the third one. And what we're seeing is a lot of shifting in the way we're all connected through technology, but also how the world of work is evolving as well. So I've just been reading today that Hyundai are now using robot-like figures that look like people, which is, pretty startling. We also have driverless vehicles. Personally, I'm dead against it. But then other people might say, well, if people don't drive or they've got a disability, it enables them to have more control over their journey if they can afford it. So there could be an upside. I take that. I still feel the world of work is very good for us. And if we take that away through robotics, through automation, through technology, through AI too much, it's actually going to make life very complex for us all. So towards the end of this month, we also have a conjunction between Mercury and Pluto. We have Mars and Pluto. That's very strong, very, very idealistic towards the end of this month. Across the 27th and 29th of January, very different energies from what are playing out at the start of the month when we had a Capricorn stellium as we came into the year, and then later on the 1st, Mercury played catch up with Venus, Mars and the Sun. It's just that Mercury at the very start of January was squaring off with Neptune, and that's a big prompt to us all not to believe everything we read or hear, because Mercury is, of course, detrimented in Sagittarius. It was there for the 3rd year in succession, and also the square with Neptune very distorting. So if you came into this year wanting to achieve things but felt a lack of traction or a sense of disorientation or feeling exhausted or run down, hardly a surprise. So to switch from that to being very thrusting and mindful of our role in the world and how we connect to the wider world, very Capricornian, or thinking about things like structures or reaping the benefits of a lot of hard work over a long time. Yes, for some people that may have happened, but I think for a lot of us it's like, where do I stand in this big shift that's going on? And the people who are more outspoken can often be the people who are disparaged the most. And Aquarius people can actually be on the end of that at times, because Aquarius people can be visionaries. They can see things very futuristically in a positive way, but also where things are not going in the right direction for the common good. Now, other Aquarius energy could be, because it's more detached, it can be a bit dystopian with Pluto there, that we have all these new ways of being and doing things, particularly in terms of the social consciousness of us all, because Pluto is very much about how we're all connected. And the sign of Aquarius is very much about our unity. It is about us in a more collective way, if you like. So there's big changes going on, but not all of them are great, in my humble opinion. And what we're going to see between now and the end of January is a pushback against some of this authoritarian language, action. There's going to be a demand for more accountability, openness, truth. The sign of Aquarius, in terms of its modern ruler Uranus, is about higher purpose. That's what the whole concept of the water bear is about. It's about baptism. It's about where our values are more important than the building we exist in, the car we drive, the job or the status that Capricorn may draw us towards. And I must stress that Capricornian energy can have lots of very good qualities. It's about experience, knowledge, wisdom. It's about having done things the same way for a long time. But we have seen, for example, the way we shop shifts so much that physical retail, bricks and mortar stores, are under mortal threat. And that's very Pluto in Capricorn, being dismantled. Not everything is like Phoenix in its response to Pluto. Some things can actually be broken down. So society as a whole, remember Margaret Thatcher once claimed there's no such thing as society. I'm not a raging socialist by any account at all. We do need each other, and perhaps one of the biggest challenges that's coming with this modern world is isolation. Yes, we can have technology to connect, but if you don't have physical contact, there's nothing that's going to be worse for personkind than loneliness. That's really a big problem that we're facing. So as we go into this Aquarius energy at the end of the month, you're going to see the protesters in around this time, however much they're battered down, may not take it. We've also seen people in Georgia, in Eastern Europe, constantly protesting about the fixed election there. We've also got the situation in Ukraine, which is very delicate. In Hungary, we've got a deeply unpopular leadership there, which totally lost the majority of people, and it's only a matter of time before they go. But then there are other people who are deeply unhappy with a more egalitarian approach, a more humanistic approach, and they want to have their voice heard as well. So we're going to see some big tussles towards the end of January about where we're heading, what the true future for us all holds, where our place in it is. But most of all, the sign of Aquarius celebrates individuality, but it also respects deeply community and also cooperation and collaboration. We don't have to stop being ourselves in order to get on with other people. So Aquarius would say, the Sun, true, is in detriment in the sign of Aquarius, but supported by Mercury, we're going to find some very valuable dialogue, conversations, agreement, consensus. Not everybody who wants to force their will, and because the might is right approach is what's given them some quick results. It's not sustainable, believe me, it is not. We will see a pushback, particularly when Uranus, the co-ruler, the modern ruler, the sign of Aquarius, moves back into Gemini on the 26th of April. And also, just to say, we have a new solar eclipse in Aquarius on the 17th of February, but that's going to clash with Uranus because it's very late, because of course we've had a series of new moons at 28 degrees, and that solar eclipse will clash with Uranus, and that could also be like an ignition point in the following 6 months where people do not feel heard, do not feel respected, and are fed up of being pushed around by people whose motive is undoubtedly power rather than how we can improve our overall experience from a collective viewpoint. I'm now going to go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces. Thank you so much for joining me for this unique for Cazimi in January video. Please check out that offer on your special individual forecast for year 2026 by seeing the link beneath this video. So Aries, the 4 Cazimis of January for you give you an initial opportunity to raise your profile in the most dynamic and self-assured way. In fact, all through 2026, your enthusiasm can be infectious, and it may be that you're driving towards a new target. But if you do reach a goal this month, something you've aspired to for a long time, do give yourself the opportunity to celebrate it. And it's not just about being more confident. You can use the charm of Venus in a very positive way as well. But sometimes in life, when we do reach the summit and a success point, we then realise that although that had been important to us for a long time, now we've evolved and we want something different. And that could be what happens to you towards the end of this month, to be honest, because Neptune will come out of your 12th house, which hasn't been easy since 2012, apart from the 6 months with you last year. And then, of course, Saturn joins you on the 14th of February, and Saturn and Neptune come together in a conjunction on the 18th of February, and that really is a line in the sand, and particularly because the day before that there's a solar eclipse, the first in the new series in Aquarius, which is asking you to think much more about your long-term future, but also about the things that aspire you above the more tangible realm, which is Capricornian energy. So some big changes may be going on, but if you don't feel that there's a big prize that you've about to reach, and it's more that something you did do professionally has actually changed over the last few years, that wouldn't be a surprise either. But have confidence and know that Saturn is about structure, coming back to your sign, the start of a new 29.5 year cycle, and also Neptune's very much about style. If we like, or imagination and creativity. And because of the forward thinking but also friendly energy of Aquarius, you could come together perhaps in a leadership role with others in a fantastic way as this year goes on from this Aquarius energy that's developing later this month. Please check out that offer on your special individual forecast for year 2026 by seeing the link beneath this video. So Taurus, the first Cazimi of January features your ruler Venus. And Venus can be in the 9th house, an appreciation of widening our horizons. It may be about what you're reading, it could be about what you're learning, teaching, it may be about what you're promoting, it could be about travel and immersing yourself in a different kind of environment which is incredibly stimulating to your senses. Then again with Mars in conjunction with the Sun on the 9th, if you are feeling penned in by something which isn't working for you, that natural appreciation you have of continuity can be challenged very pointedly. In fact, that can be a theme all through this year. And you may decide to break free of something, and somebody may find that difficult. It could be a co-worker, it could be a friend around an interest. It may be in a romantic sphere, because Mars, of course, can be about desire. So if a relationship has become too repetitive, too predictable, it doesn't have that thrill and excitement, you may find with the combination, particularly of Venus and Mars on the 8th of January, that you're up for something that just makes your heart race. And if you're single, that could see you going on some dates with some very different types of people. But one of the big themes I feel for Taurus people is, as this month goes on and we have the other two Cazimis, the change agenda could show itself most as far as your work is concerned, or around where you live. And that could be in terms of the bricks and mortar you actually physically want to move, or it could be about what you change within it. And that can become even more important in the last 6 months of this year because of the solar eclipse in Leo of the 12th of August. But what I would say, if you're finding yourself rather restless, penned in, easily frustrated, that's because of this raft of energy in Capricorn, which, like your sign, has an appreciation of doing things in a methodical way, being conscious of the benefits, not being too impulsive. But at the moment, your desire to be much more spontaneous is actually very strong indeed. So if you're in a pretty good relationship, a pretty good job, and you quite like where you live, you're probably yearning for some new experiences in terms of travel destinations, where you're going to book a vacation, or perhaps learning new skills or increasing your awareness by downloading information that widens your perspective in the most incredibly positive of ways. Please check out that offer on your special individual forecast for year 2026 by seeing the link beneath this video. So Gemini, for you, the first two of these Cazimis could bring up some issues to do with control, to be honest, particularly with Jupiter in the opposition with the Mars Cazimi of the 9th. Who owns or contributes what? It may be about money, it could be about intimacy. The 8th house can be about where we're most deeply invested. It can be in a very spiritual way as well. But if something feels a little out of kilter, I feel the Cazimis at the start of January are really pushing you, perhaps to discuss Venus, but at times to assert Mars. If there is someone you're finding irresistible, because the 8th house can be a very powerful energy, almost to the point of obsession. So if you can't get someone out of your mind, you may have met them over the festive period, you may be compelled to try to connect with them in some kind of way. But the 8th house, where those two initial Cazimis are, can be about deep psychological work as well. Venus may mean that you can learn from being conscious of whether you find intimacy or not easy. And Mars may give you the thrust, if you are wanting to improve your long-term finances, to marshal your resources in a very shrewd and long-term way, particularly if they're shared finances. But just be conscious of Jupiter. Jupiter for sure can be about luck, can be about good fortune, but it can also be about philosophies and dogma. And there may be a big battle of wills that you're going to experience in the early parts of this month. Now later on in the month, as Venus moves on the 17th into the sector of truth for you, higher truths, and combines soon after with Pluto, that's going to be intriguing. Then your ruler and the sun move into your 9th house on the 20th. We have the Cazimi between them on the 21st. Mars plays catch up in Aquarius on the 23rd, but the sun and Pluto come together on the 4th Cazimi on the 23rd, and that's very much about widening your horizons. It can be about escape, it can be about independence, adventure. It could also be about travel. It may be about international business interest, because Venus can of course be about money, but it may be that you're attracted to someone who comes from a completely different cultural background, but that actually is what makes them all the more appealing, because it's exotic. If you do find yourself really determined to plan that vacation for later in the year, it can definitely happen towards the end of this month. But if you feel caged in by anything, and it may be your own habitual thinking that may be a little on the negative side. So that's something you can challenge towards the end of January. You may get some advice. It could be legal or contractual advice, or there could be some good news around those things. But just know, when we get Mars and Pluto coming together towards the end of the month, that can create a big power battle. And if your philosophy, your ideology, your way of looking at things is very different to another person's, that can be a point of real impact between you. Please check out that offer on your special individual forecast for year 2026 by seeing the link beneath this video. So Cancer, the 4 Cazimis for you is really fascinating because initially the contact between the Sun and Venus is lovely. If you have met someone over the festivities, this really gives you a chance to get to know each other better. But it's a very mutual influence. It can bring harmony, even to a relationship that maybe has been a little trying, by being more prepared to give and take, understanding none of us is perfect, and really leaning into the other person's needs. But then Mars, in his Cazimi with the Sun, gives you an opportunity to be firmer about your boundaries. If you're needing to interact with someone, a line manager or a colleague who tends to want their own way or be very directive, a past partner who's not very easy to deal with around access to the kids, or it may be that in terms of you want to be more competitive around your work or your sporting interest, because Mars in the 7th house is great for a one-to-one kind of sport, such as squash, badminton, table tennis, anything where we have a direct opponent could bring out that side of your nature. But then as the month goes on, whatever's cooking earlier in the month around relationships is going to become much more profound towards the end of January. You're either going to become much more invested and much more devoted, or there could be a breakdown. So it's either breakthrough, breakdown in simple terms. You could also find yourself thinking about long-term finances. Now, many people perhaps marshalling their resources as carefully as possible, but if it's about pensions, investments, savings, all very 8th house energy, but in a very practical way. The more emotional or spiritual dimension is evolution. You may, in some ways, particularly with Mars joining Aquarius on the 23rd and coming into a very rugged conjunction with Pluto towards the end of the month, you actually may want to confront something that you're finding difficult. And in the past, I think there has been a tendency for you, when things have been challenging, the tensions crept into a relationship, for you to withdraw. Later in January, in fact all through January, you're going to be much more up for saying what you need, which is totally admirable. Because once people say what they need, other people will respond to that boundary. If we don't know, then people may keep overshooting that boundary. So you can do that in the early parts of the month. But the 8th house energy is very much about intense desire. If there is a relationship that's going well, it could get very sexual at the end of January. But equally and totally conversely, if it's not going very well, it could get very heated and break down, because of course Plutonian energies can be what needs to leave our lives, but sometimes 8th house energy is what we're attached to. We want to hold on to it. And because of course the 8th house is about fundamental change, it feels like the tectonic plates are moving beneath our feet when we're not necessarily quite ready for that to happen. Please check out that offer on your special individual forecast for year 2026 by seeing the link beneath this video. So Leo, the Venus Cazimi of the 6th of January can see you use your natural warmth and generosity to help another person, but in a practical way. It may be also that if you're interested in crafting or making, you can find a new interest or hobby, or one that's been ongoing, can really get lit up. Your passion could be ignited even more. And if that does mean taking an existing item and beautifying or changing it in some ways, that can be very, very satisfying. Now, the combination between the Sun and Mars on the 9th, that's much more about physical dynamism. And the great thing about having Mars, which it has been since the middle of December in your 6th house, is it probably has given you a bit more stamina this year. So add the Sun to that. That's a very good blend. So if you have been feeling a little bit depleted, if you're in the northern hemisphere, if you had low amounts of daylight, or there's a lot of routines that have got a little bit pushed to one side, I think here Mars can just help you to get moving forwards in a much more dynamic way. But if you have given yourself some New Year's resolutions around being more physically fit, then this is a superb aspect. Also, if you're not particularly happy in a job, can give you also the trigger, the motivation to do something about it. Because Leo people often can work best in some kind of collaboration. You know, you are ruled by the Sun, but you're a fixed sign, so continuity is important for you as well. So you may find yourself seeing an opportunity to provide a service or articulate your talents to someone in a way with more enthusiasm. So that's lovely. But from the middle of the month, Venus pitches into your 7th house and connects with Pluto. If you aren't enjoying a relationship at the moment, and perhaps even around the domestic sphere, the person you live with, whether it's flatmates, friend, whether it is in a romantic context, if you feel you're doing more of the heavy lifting than the other person, I feel that Venus moving into your 7th house and joining with Pluto is not necessarily decisive. It can be very constructive, but it could start to give you food for thought whether your relationships are particularly a fair exchange. And that consciousness is going to rise with the Mercury Cazimi of the 21st and Mars joining the other players in Aquarius on the 23rd, but then the combination between the Sun and Pluto. So if something isn't working around a relationship, the latter days of Aquarius are quite turbulent potentially. Then the solar eclipse of the 17th of February squaring off with Uranus. So it may be around a professional relationship as much as a personal one, but you're wanting to feel the boundaries are fair. Very Aquarius, isn't it? Fairness. And if there isn't a fairness, or you don't feel seen or heard or recognised in the way you want, that can create frustration, but it can also create the spark to do something about it. So if there is someone you do collaborate well with, or you are drawn to, and you're really attracted to as well, wow, a very fateful period of days brings the curtain down on January, and you could find a huge shift which is exciting and could also see you joining with someone but leaving something else which isn't working well for you. So it's a bit polarized. It may be that you're not in a relationship and meet someone. It may be that you're in a relationship and you don't meet someone towards the end of January, but you develop the motivation again to make the moves, to start thinking about what your life might be in a tie which was more collaborative, which was more give and take, which is more harmonizing, which was more mutually uplifting. Please check out that offer on your special individual forecast for year 2026 by seeing the link beneath this video. So Virgo, what do the January Cazimis mean for you? Well, I want you to cast your mind back to March 2023. It may have not been very powerfully conscious at that time, but I feel you might have just started to think, is the job or life structure I'm in really right for me? But it may have been quite fleeting. You may have got that feeling quite strongly from the 21st of January 2024, Pluto's birthday, the 21st of January, through to the 1st of September, and then again from the middle of November as Pluto returned into Aquarius, and it may have been creeping up on you all the more since then. But as you have these Cazimis at the start of January, the ingredient that you're really craving for in your life is passion. And that passion doesn't have to be of the romantic variety, although it can be. It's a passion to express yourself, to engage with others, to feel alive, to really demonstrate your creativity and flair. So even if you are someone who very metronomically has applied your talents, your discipline, your ability to assist people with a service in a very precise, practical and definable way, something is waking up within you. Now, it's also possible you could have a high point on the first of these two Cazimis and a breakthrough. You may have a connection with someone romantically. You may just feel absolutely gorgeous, or should I say even more alluring. But as the month goes on, and particularly with Mercury, your ruler, returning to Aquarius, and having the Mercury Cazimi on the 21st, Pluto's birthday, then Mars joining up, and then the Sun and Pluto combining on the 23rd in that fourth Cazimi, I think something is shifting. It may be something that's unstoppable in some ways, because that's how Pluto works. Sometimes we can resist it, and we can resist it for quite a long time. Sometimes circumstances change around us without our consent or desire, but it's for a bigger reason. So something's shaping up in your situation, particularly with Uranus heading right to the top of your chart at the end of April, the 26th, and we are going to have a Pisces lunar eclipse on the 28th of August, which is going to forge a T-square between the Sun in your sign, the Moon in Pisces, and that Uranus position. And that's going to be the real trigger point in the following 6 months for whatever you're thinking about now. If it is a talent or a hobby you've got that you could actually perhaps develop a sideline income from, whether it is something you want to do in terms of theatre, music, performance, anything which helps you to dazzle as well as use your very formidable skills is what's very much in the mix with these 4 Cazimis this month. Please check out that offer on your special individual forecast for year 2026 by seeing the link beneath this video. Libra, the first of the 4 Cazimis, features your lovely ruler Venus. Because the sign of Capricorn can be very much about the practical sphere and therefore property, it may be that you'll want to use your naturally refined taste, which is often exquisite, to decorate, refurbish, upgrade some part of your abode. For other Librans, with the thrust of Mars on the 9th with that Cazimi, it could be taking the action. That may be getting a contractor in to do something that requires a bit more muscle. It may also be that something is changing in terms of your immediate environment. and the desire, Mars, can give you the push to perhaps break out of something that may have been safe and protective to a degree, but perhaps it's stopping your personal growth. Now, once Venus moved into Aquarius on the 17th, connects to Pluto, you're really going to be gaining a very much more outgoing momentum in the latter part of January. Then the Sun and Mercury merging together on the 21st in the third Cazimi. Then Mars playing catch up, moving on the 23rd, the Sun and Pluto Cazimi. That's all so enriching for you to have fun, for you to mix and mingle, to socialise, to join a group. If you've ever wanted to pot or paint or sing or perform, the latter part of January really gives you a magical opportunity to do that. But as ever with Pluto, we have to go with it. And if there's something you're resisting, which could come from that fourth house energy earlier in the month, because you're being very protective, it might stop you actually embracing a more dynamic, dazzling, and should I say even flirty part of life's potentials. But it may mean that you need to step outside your comfort zone. But your comfort zone at the start of the year will be something you're very active on, wanting to reform or improve. Please check out that offer on your special individual forecast for year 2026 by seeing the link beneath this video. Scorpio, Venus combining with the Sun on the 6th gives you an ability to articulate your ideas in a way which other people will find particularly alluring. It may be creatively, it could be someone that you're chatting to that you really like, but the passion that comes from your traditional ruler Mars combining with the Sun in the second Cazimi should not be underestimated. That can also give you the desire to physically move around more. The third house can be about short journeys. A lot of athletes will have Mars in the third house because it can make us a little restless, but also a lot of journalists will have Mars in the third house or in Gemini because that gives a push to express ideas, which is what the third house is about. But ironically, as the month goes on, the Sun and Mercury move to Aquarius, and then we have Mars, your traditional ruler, joining up with them, and then the Sun combining with your modern ruler Pluto on the 23rd, and then your two rulers coming together at the end of the month in a conjunction, Mars and Pluto. Something's shifting around where you live, and it's possible that you will get some real thrust going if you do want to physically alter your abode. But it's also possible that you could become much more assertive around a tender or sensitive issue and be a bit more frank and to the point about saying what you really need from that situation. And that could be something that's not easy to do. And all of this can come to the boil on the new solar eclipse series that begins on the 17th of February in Aquarius, but clashes with Uranus at the very end of its journey in your sector of relating. Uranus has been shaking things up for the last 7 years or so. There may still be a little bit more to be shook out, particularly if one close relationship, as has been, isn't quite feeding your soul in the way you really want. But in the early part of this month, and particularly those first two Cazimis, there's someone you're chatting to, and the connection between you can be very magnetic. But where will that lead? Please check out that offer on your special individual forecast for year 2026 by seeing the link beneath this video. Sagittarius, Venus combining with the Sun on the 6th, can give you a beautiful appreciation of anything that has quality. Now that quality could be something that's quite exclusive, it may be something luxurious, it could be something on the other hand that's very earthy, aesthetic, like some really nice organic vegetables. But whichever you're drawn towards, your appreciation of the good things in life is definitely heightened. But the Venus Cazimi can be fortunate for you financially over the next year. And Mars combining with the Sun on the 9th adds more thrust to the process, because Mars can be about desire, particularly in terms of its rulership of Scorpio, and often it can be about instant gratification. And the second house energy that is manifested by the first two Cazimis is very sensual. So don't be surprised if you do have a much greater desire for connection throughout this year. But because your ruler Jupiter is opposite Mars in the second of these Cazimis, pretty well exactly, there may also be a bit of a tussle if you see a financial issue very differently to someone else. However, as the month goes on, the pace of life is going to quicken at quite a notable rate, but it will be exciting. So buckle up. You're going to be moving around, you're going to be making quick decisions, particularly on the Mercury Cazimi of the 21st. But you can also express ideas that are very passionately important to you on the Pluto Cazimi of the 23rd. And with Mars and Pluto coming together in a conjunction towards the end of the month, if you really, really feel that you have something to say that you want many people to hear, and you're very invested in that, and you really believe in yourself, you can be hugely persuasive. Also important to know that Mars and Pluto together in a conjunction can be quite ruthless, and therefore if you're discussing something towards the end of January, it will be important to also listen to the other person's responses. Please check out that offer on your special individual forecast for year 2026 by seeing the link beneath this video. Capricorn, the Venus Cazimi of the 6 is brilliant if you want to add some extra dazzle to your personal identity. Venus can be very much about style. It can also be about how we make an impression. The first house is very much about that too. But if you do decide to buy some new clothes, perhaps in the sales, many people these days are attracted towards some kind of cosmetic treatment or change, and that could appeal to you. Well, if you do it, you're going to want to do it well. But the conjunction between the Sun and Mars has very different energies. It brings into play perhaps Venus's more creative juices, but Mars brings thrust, and here Mars is much more like the Aries rulership it has. It's about taking a step forwards in a very decisive way. It's about being bolder, and it's not about necessarily considering the outcome of your decision too much. It's about doing it and doing it now. So there's a sense of urgency at the start of this month, but it could be around making some changes to your personal persona. It may be around your profile online, around your CV if you're applying for jobs. It could be that you just feel so much more self-assured about your sense of attractiveness. And brilliant, why not? Because Capricorn people can be a little shy, particularly when younger. But as the month goes on, any creative energy that you're putting into your situation, what you're really desiring from Cazimi 3 and 4 is results, something tangible that you can demonstrate to people, that you've converted your idea through alchemy into something that's actually physical. And in a very basic sense, that may be money. It could be taking a hobby that you really invest in early in the month and really feeling it's making progress and giving you a boost in terms of your personal value, your worth, very second house. And of course Aquarius can be very futuristic. Are there some new ideas? Perhaps it is around bitcoins, whether it is around some kind of investment that requires a little bit of a vision and being up with latest trends. All of that comes very much to the fore later in the month. But also your desire for creature comforts can really peak as Mars and Pluto come together at the end of January in a very intense way indeed. Please check out that offer on your special individual forecast for year 2026 by seeing the link beneath this video. So Aquarius, the Venus Cazimi, frankly, could be the end of a cycle when it comes to a relationship or a financial strand. but 12th house prepares us for first house. So you're going through two radically different areas of your experience this month. At the very start of the month, for sure, it may be feeling nostalgic, maybe a need to retreat a little bit, have some downtime to release, to just let and process some of the intensity that's gone on, possibly over the holidays. It may relate to a relationship that you're wanting to bring to a close, or you've brought to the close in the distant past, but somehow or another you may feel a need to just comb through the fragments of that and just check out where it all is. The other thing with a Cazimi with Venus in the 12th house is possibly an attraction to someone new, but someone who may already be in another relationship. So a secret connection, or it may be that you're noticing someone's non-verbal language, the way they smile, the curiosity they show. But Mars in the 12th house and the second Cazimi is a little bit more volatile, to be honest. Something that's been simmering away in the depths could come up potently. It may be tears, it may be anger, because that's what Mars in the 12th house does. But the real shift point this month is not the second or third or fourth Cazimis, it's actually Venus moving into your sign on the 17th and connecting to Pluto, because that's going to bring you into the present about how you feel about relationships or your sense of attractiveness, and then you're going to emerge from this tune down and really start to want to embrace things in the here and now, and that will become much more obvious as the Sun and Mercury arrive in Aquarius on the 20th, come into the third Cazimi on the 21st. Your ideas can absolutely sparkle with brilliance. Then they're joined by Mars, so that really brings you into the present for the following 6 weeks. You can gain enormous traction. But then we have the fourth of the Cazimis as the Sun and Pluto connect for the third successive time. And this one, I feel, will be the most potent because of having the other players in the sign of Aquarius. So that's Venus, Mercury, Mars, and Mars and Pluto come together in a conjunction towards the end of the month. So if you have been struggling a little bit at the start of the year, feel a bit cocooned, feel a bit detached, feel a bit disorientated, by the end of the month, you're going to be seizing the tiller of your life direction in the firmest, most self-confident way. You're going to be roaring into the rest of the year. You're going to be spectacular in how you can express yourself with conviction, authenticity, passion, but also amazing intelligence too. Please check out that offer on your special individual forecast for year 2026 by seeing the link beneath this video. So Pisces, January is going to see Neptune, your modern ruler, move out of your zodiac sign on the 26th, back into Aries where it spent 6 months last year, and on the 14th of February, Saturn says au revoir as well. Great, because they have, particularly Saturn, been very dominant the last couple of years and maybe have limited your enthusiasm for social connection. You might not at times just have had the vitality and desire, but right at the start of this month, and particularly with the Venus Cazimi, you can start thinking about who you could reach out to, who you haven't seen for a while. If there are friendships that are very strong in your life, you can celebrate the things you have in common. But Mars's Cazimi on the 9th is much more to do with you perhaps taking a leadership role, or it may be something for your long term that you're putting in motion. But ironically, by the time Venus moves on the 17th, be joined by the Sun on the 20th and Mercury, things are slowing down. You're getting more of a Pisces echo. That 12th house energy is emphasised more by Mars moving on the 23rd for 6 long weeks. So if you do find yourself towards the end of January, despite the desire to be more interactive at the start of it, then becoming more selective or actually not agreeing to meet up with all the invites, it wouldn't be a surprise, because the big theme for you, Pisces, is if you do connect with people, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. And you could find yourself really testing who is really with you, even if you aren't feeling quite so outgoing and fun to be with, who can give you the space to just share some maybe more sensitive strands, because they could come up towards the end of this month. In fact, if there is something where you feel a person's been deeply unfair, a real sense of injustice could be activated as Mars and Pluto come together towards the end of January. But just also be conscious of someone who may be a little bit ruthless if you're feeling quiet, keeping to yourself, and suddenly that seems to in some ways irritate a boss, a line manager, a co-worker. So just make sure that you keep your boundaries firm, because there could be parts of you that does want to be a little bit more detached, maybe have some more time for yourself. Nothing wrong with that. If you do engage with any kind of healing towards the end of January, it can be deeply therapeutic. If you go to see a counsellor, if you have some kind of treatment, perhaps through natural medicine, I think it could be something you can really savour. Perhaps a spa day, that 12th house energy, Aquarius, but 12th reflection, the Aquarius energy, maybe to go with some friends you do feel very comfortable with, and I think that can be a marvellous way to wind down the month. Please check out that offer on your special individual forecast for year 2026 by seeing the link beneath this video.